Hi, I'm Matt.
And I'm Dee Dee. We are the hilarious outcome of opposing brains sharing a mutual desire to share knowledge and positive thinking about hemp and cannabis.
We are here to tear down the walls built by Big Pharma and other big companies that seek to keep the human race in fear and divided.
We are here to shatter the myths about hemp and cannabis and change the stigma of this amazing plant. Welcome to Hemp and Happiness with the Hemp Queen
And Emperor.
podcast. Join us as we venture into this misunderstood and the unknown. Hey, happy hempsters. Welcome back to the show. Today we are talking about something that might not be so fun. We got some, this was, I kind of picked this one. Actually, yeah, we both kind of picked this one. This is just a topic that needs to be talked about, even if we may hurt some feelings today. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, it needs to be covered.
So today we're talking about the impact of e-cigarettes on the lungs. You know, those lungs, those things that help us breathe and give us life and all that important stuff. And just so everybody knows, I am a former smoker of cigarettes. Worst things ever probably made and put on this planet, at least as far as all the carcinogens are concerned and all the additives that they added to the cigarettes to make them more addicting. I finally stopped smoking back in 2014 and have not touched a cigarette since and never plan to again for the rest of my life. And that also leads me into the whole vaping and e-cigarettes. I never did it. I've tried it a couple times, just didn't want that habit back. So I never partook in that. But we need to talk about it. It's something important. People's lungs, your lungs are important. You need your lungs. They don't grow on trees. So yeah. And off we go. What do you think, Matt?
So, when you get into vaping, there's a lot of different, I guess you have to kind of define vaping because there's tons of different vapes now. There's dabs, there's Juuls, there's pens. There's these new crazy bong things that I actually see people hitting in their cars, and it looks fucking ridiculous. There is the nicotine aspect of it, the tobacco derivative aspect of it, and then there's all the other vapes, which would include CBD and cannabis. So when you're talking about vaping, you really want to break it down. Obviously, there's concerns of nicotine, and just to kind of get that in and out, nicotine is one of the most addicting substances on the planet, no matter how you ingest it. And if you use it, you will become addicted, and it will cause withdrawal symptoms and all kind of issues.
Oh, the withdrawal symptoms are horrible.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing worse than having to detox off of an addictive substance. It is federally legal. I have no idea why something so addictive and so dangerous would be federally. Oh wait, I do. Money.
I was about to say,
so there you
what?
Go. So if you want to help rich people get richer and put your own health at risk, keep vaping those Nick vapes or whatever. But then you get into the CBD and cannabis aspect of it, and I think that that's more our wheelhouse.
Of course.
And a lot of people think that because it's there's no nicotine, it's okay. But it's really not. So
unfortunately, we had to break the bad news to y'all. Vaping is not good for you in any sense, in any form. Not cannabis, not CBD, none of it. It's not good for you. Our opinions. Right. But
it's not.
True.
That's actually fact.
I know.
And here's why. There's a couple articles that we put in the show notes, and if you're currently vaping or if you're interested in vaping, I highly recommend you read them. I won't get too deep into that, but I will tell you that every vape currently on the market is going to contain a chemical called propylene glycol.
Not every.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. What's the
Not
substitute?
At least currently, it's just a distillate and terpenes.
Oh, okay.
So
I didn't know that.
a lot of them have pulled that propylene glycol because it is very bad for you.
Right.
That's some of them had stated about the whole popcorn lung, and there's about what 3,000 people that ended up in the hospital, and that was over a different substance too. But I think they've known that propylene glycol is not the best thing to vape. It's a thinner.
Right. But I would say
I
every
would
vape I've looked at
I would
has
check the
propylene
vapes.
glycol
Mhm.
in the ingredients. And propylene glycol is if propylene being in there, it's an inorganic product.
Mhm.
It is a derivative of petroleum that you're putting into your lungs, and it has serious health side effects. That being said, it's also used in other medical things and foods that the FDA has approved, which is crazy to me.
The
But it's
FDA
there,
approves all kinds of things that shouldn't be approved, and
S-
yet cannabis is still.
right? So you want to avoid propylene glycol, and then you get into, and Dee Dee, I'll let you speak to this. Then you get into vapes that have other chemicals outside. So you right off the bat, you most likely have propylene glycol. There is, you know, as Dee Dee stated, other propylene glycol free vapes out there. I
Mhm.
personally have never seen one, so that's how. And I'm in the industry, so that's how often that you're going to see that currently.
Currently.
And then beyond that, you have a whole slew of other chemicals in those CBD and cannabis vapes that are dangerous. So tell us about that, Dee Dee.
Well, I think take it back a few years. I mean, vaping's relatively new. It's only been really on the market for about 15 years max, I think, when they started, trying to get people to quit smoking. So this was the best alternative, right? Is to have the liquid where it's vape and not a cigarette. You're still getting the nicotine that people wanted to try to help them quit, and the whole step down. And it was touted as the best way to quit smoking. But then, what they were using in those products, like the propylene glycol, y- later on, you learn that that's not good. And then I think it was about in what, 2018, 2019, there was an outbreak. A lot of people ended up really hurt from vitamin E acetate. That was being used as a thinner in vaping products, and specifically in cannabis vaping products. And a lot of people got hurt by that. And a lot of those that were selling those vapes were doing it underground. They were just taking their, THC distillate and mixing it with that thinner to make it smokable, because a lot of those distillates are pretty thick and it's hard to get them out of the vape, the actual vape cartridge. So that was causing a lot of problems. Now, most stuff on the market, if you find a legit source, they're not using that stuff. And that is, you got to have a good source. If you're going to do the vapes, you got to know your source and you got to know what's in your cartridges. That's super important. Most cannabis products now from legit sources and even CBD, they are using the distillate, which is the extraction, and they're using terpenes to flavor them. Now, we all know terpenes, some of them don't taste so well. They have great names, but I wouldn't say they actually taste like Fruity Pebbles. Although I wouldn't know because I don't vape, but at the same time that, people do say that. I think it's important if you're going to vape, check your sources, make sure that, they're not using propylene glycol, and definitely not the vitamin E acetate, because that stuff is really, really dangerous for your lungs. I mean, it causes emphysema, it causes asthma, it causes, I've even heard of people dying from that. So that is something extremely, you got to be careful about. And I mean, I get it. It's something people like. It has increased in popularity among kids, which is awful. I remember when Morgan came home with her vape when she was 16, and I thought I was going to lose my mind. I was so upset that she had this, but of course it was the cool thing to do. And I get it. I mean, I remember being that age and you wanted to fit in, but it just it infuriated me because I knew Well, I didn't want her to damage her lungs like I had already done with just smoking regular cigarettes. So I think it's kids definitely do not need to be vaping. Their lungs are so impressionable. It's scary and it's sad, and hopefully we can kind of stop that. Now, I mean, I hate to be dissing on the vape industry, and I really don't want to do that. I get most of them have good intentions because of the stop smoking, but you just got to be careful. You got to be so careful. You got to know what product you're using. I mean, you do.
Well, I don't know. I agree. But I also don't know that there is a safe vape product out there. And just to dig one step further on what you were stating, Dee Dee, the condition that is caused by vaping has been given its own name because it's so frequent. It's called EVALI,
Is that
and
how you pronounce it?
or EVALI, and it's an acronym for e-cigarettes and vaping associated lung injury. And essentially, it's that popcorn lung scarring of the lung
Hmm.
tissues and cell death, which occurs from propylene glycol. Propylene glycol is directly associated with cell death,
Hmm.
which is just exactly what it says. Uh, your cells come in contact with it, they die. So I guess to turn the table on that, why would someone choose to vape? Why would someone choose to vape CBD and cannabis? There's a couple different reasons. One, obviously, is as Dee Dee already stated, people think it's safer. It's not. And I do want to get your opinion on before this is all said and done on smoking versus vaping because I think that that's a hot, fun subject. Um, but beyond that, we do have uh, customers, followers, and friends who choose to vape CBD and cannabis because the CBD vaping and smoking are the two fastest ways to get that chemical into your body and get it working. And that is true. That is 100% true.
The CBD chemical and THC chemical,
Correct.
correct?
Correct. And nicotine.
And
I mean, if we're
nicotine,
going to
yeah.
throw that in there.
Yeah.
And there are needs for that with people who have certain conditions that need that immediate release, including PTSD
Hmm.
and other disorders where when that issue unveils itself, the need for release is immediate. Um, so, is there a solution for that? Currently, I don't know.
Oh, I don't know either. I mean, honestly, personally, I think just smoking the plant is the best form. Just smoking the flower. If you're going to get into cannabis, just smoke the flower. But in the state of Kentucky, we cannot sell hemp flower. We obviously don't have medical yet. I think there's a couple days left in the session. Even that for the new bill, they took out flower and put vaporizing in there, which I was absolutely floored by because there's all these laws coming to terms trying to eliminate vaping, and then they want to vape. So it made no sense to me at all. If you're going to allow medical, just allow the natural flower, the plant. But that's kind of the issue here in Kentucky. People have to turn to vapes because they can't just smoke the flower, even the hemp flower. So if you're going to smoke, I say you smoke it in the most natural form that it comes in. I think that will ease up some of those concerns. I mean, but every time you're putting a hot substance that is heated up, whether it is the flower or the e-cigarettes or any of that, I mean, it releases dangerous chemicals. There's no question about it. I think, me personally, I prefer edibles. I think edibles are where it's at. I like the oil, the tinctures. That is what is safer. Period. Those forms of those products are safer. Um, it I think it has a lot to do with how society feels about flower and what it smells like. And the fact that they can't distinguish between marijuana and hemp because it's the same plant, people. I think that has something to do with it. So, police officers have a hard time knowing whether it's hemp or whether it's marijuana. And if they do a field test on the hemp flower, it's gonna say it's got THC in it, which it does. But until they do actual testing to know what the percentage is, they won't know that it's only hemp. So I think there's that whole issue. I feel like if we would just break down those barriers and allow it to be federally legal, a lot of other issues would come to light and come to an end.
Right. And I agree. The smoking is completely unhealthy. Anytime you are, American Lung Association has made it very clear.
Mhm.
Anytime you are inhaling smoke into your lungs, it doesn't matter if it's nicotine, tobacco, cannabis, or a house fire. You are doing damage to your lungs. You are inhaling carcinogens. You are inhaling tar. The cannabis flower is particularly high in tar that will cause damage to your lungs. However, if I were given the choice, can you smoke something natural that came from the ground, or can you vape something filled with chemicals, including inorganic chemicals, potentially pesticides, potentially acetate? I think I would go with this plant that grew out of the ground,
Same.
but I wouldn't choose either. And just to speak to what we were talking about earlier, a lot of people think that they needed that immediate release because we live in a society of immediate response
Mhm.
where it has to be now. You have to get that immediate gratification. You can't wait. You can't be patient. Um, and there's something to be spoken to about that. If you can't wait 45 minutes for, a nano derived edible to kick in, then maybe you should reassess your life. Um, if you have
I'm
a
gonna giggle because
I mean, maybe if you have a stress disorder where you need that immediate release, speaking from someone who has struggled with a stress disorder, I will tell you, your body will give you cues when that disorder
Mhm.
is going to kick in, just like a tell in a poker game. And I'm not a psychiatrist, psychologist, or anything like that. But just from my experience, I will tell you, if you really pay attention, your body will tell you when you're going to have an episode. And when your body's telling you that, it's usually too late. There's really nothing you can do to stop it. And you can choose to remove yourself, isolate yourself, whatever you need to do to be in a safe place. And you can choose to take that edible, or if you have to absolutely have that immediate release, say something triggered you that you weren't anticipating, and you're stuck and you're in a spot where you can't remove yourself. Use that vape sparingly. Use it as needed. And you
I
might,
think that's key.
yeah, you might be happier. So
Mhm.
have it, but have an alternative too, because the more you can use that alternative, say edibles,
Mhm.
which I
Or
agree,
tincture.
they're
Mhm.
fantastic. The tinctures are fantastic. Um,
And I tell you what, I wish I would have had the CBD products when I was withdrawing from nicotine and cigarettes. That
right.
I tell you what, I was a capital B bitch for 3 good weeks when I quit smoking. It was awful. The mood swings. Oh man, not being able to sleep. I mean, even having night sweats and like it was crazy. I never realized how addicting they are. And I had quit before and I'd started again, and that had kind of been my game for a while. And finally, I just went through it and I did cold turkey, but I also did use the Nicorette gum, by the way. I used that for a little bit. It did help for a little while. And then I don't do that all the time either. So I made sure I didn't get addicted to Nicorette gum. But it's tough. I mean, I grew up in a family, they all smoked. Everybody smoked when I was growing up. Everyone. And it was just natural, even though I lost an aunt to lung cancer. So tough knowing that that could have caused all of that. She also, she lived near, it was Armco at the time up in Middletown, Ohio. So lots of radon in that area, lots of lung issues in Butler County, Ohio. Um, But at the same time, I was like, damn, I'm not smart enough to not to, I should have known not to start smoking. I mean, but it happens, you're in with the family and the crowd and you keep doing it. And luckily, most of my family have all quit, which I'm happy to say. And the younger generations, most of them did not pick it up. Thank goodness. My daughter did for a while there. I was very upset with that. She watched me withdraw from that, and I never understood why she started smoking. But I think when you're young, we all do stupid things sometimes. We don't think about the consequences later on in life. And even with cannabis products, we have to think about that. You're using them, if you are using cannabis, medical marijuana, and CBD as a health supplement, whatever you want to call it, make the best choices. If you're doing it for your health, make the best choices. I just think that smoking is not the best choice. Sorry. Hated to burst your bubble on this episode, folks, but I think there's just better choices to make than vaping and smoking in general.
Well, and that's the thing too, because it's your choice.
It is.
You make the decision as an individual how you want to live your life, and I do think that people should have the freedom to vape. We sell vapes at our store.
We do.
We got our Kentucky license, which was super fun and awesome to be able to do that because people need it. And do I think that there is a place for that immediate release? Yes. And you know why?
Agreed.
Because it's the same to me. That is the same as an inhaler. And actually, a lot of the chemicals that you see in the better vapes are similar to the chemicals that you're going to see in an inhaler that provide that immediate relief. But I don't think that immediate relief is something that needs to be done every day, no matter who you are. And I don't think that unless you just have a major problem that you're working through. And if you do, I'm sorry, and I hope that you get help. But you need to think about what's best for you, and you need to think of an individual as an individual, not what's popular. And actually, one thing that I did forget to bring up, because nobody thinks about COVID anymore, thank God.
Some do.
Some do. Yeah, I still see some. I see like 1 in 20 masks now. While CBD, some studies showed that it potentially did help with the effects of COVID. Vaping actually increased the likelihood of a COVID contamination because you take the vape, you put it down, it touches other things that are potentially contaminated, and the fact that you are constantly putting it in and out of your mouth after it touches other surfaces.
I didn't really think about that.
And potentially shared. So yeah. So when you think on that, it does increase not just your chance of COVID, but anytime you're putting something in your mouth that has touched other surfaces, whatever's on that surface is going into your mouth.
Well, and COVID's a lung issue too.
Correct.
I mean, so if you're already smoking, you've already damaged your lungs, and then you're COVID. I mean, and who knows? I mean, all that stuff is still new too. So even the studies on that stuff is crazy. But I mean, it's a lung issue. You just, you can be careful of that stuff. So, yeah.
All right.
Sorry for the not so happy podcast today.
No, that it doesn't
Needed to be done.
right, and it doesn't have to be an unhappy thing, because if you are vaping, you can make the decision to stop. You can change your life every day, and if you need to vape, we're not going to judge you.
No, and that's why we have the products too.
Right. You just need to be aware of the risks and be willing to accept that risk and say, right now, the issues that I'm choosing to treat, even if it's recreational, with this vape, it outweighs the health consequences. And that may be the case, and it may not. But if you're aware, you can make the decision, you can make the difference, and you can choose how to live your life. And that's what we're all about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we appreciate you all listening. Make sure you leave comments. If you have more questions, feel free to reach out to us. We appreciate all our listeners, and we'll catch you on the flip side. Happy hempsters.
Peace.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Hempin' Happiness with the Hemp Queen
and Emperor.
Keep your mind ever open and expanding. Like, subscribe, review, follow us, all the good stuff. And
keep it hempy out there.